Well, welcome to another episode of Rimshots with Sean right here on the Rock Rage Radio Network. I have a couple of gentlemen here. We were just talking here. One's at the west coast of the United States. One's at the east coast of the United States. I'm on the east coast of Canada. Charlie Midnight, Marc Swersky. Gentlemen, how you doing?
Doing great. So far,
Yeah,
so good.
So far, so
fantastic.
good.
Glad that we
So,
finally got to talk to you.
well, and my apologies for yesterday. Anybody that wasn't cluing in, anybody will know that rural Nova Scotia, because that's where I live, can sometimes be unforgiving with the internet. So sometimes
Right.
I have a hard time believing that I live in a modern country. But anyway, we're here. Uh, sort of the gates, Charlie. The other Charlie who represents you, he sent me your video, and because I look for different genres when I do interviews, and he sends me this song and talk about it a little bit because I was like, it's a throwback. It sounds new, but it sounds like classic. Give us the skinny on it, my
Well,
friend.
well, what song are we talking about?
Well, you put me on the spot. I'll tell you right now, it's your new video that your daughter did. Give me one quick second. I'm gonna up
Okay,
here. I'm
because
gonna dial
Hundred
this up.
thousand years.
I'm gonna dial this up because he actually gave me a little bit of a background on it. Where are we here? We have a new release from two Grammy Award nominated songwriters, Charlie Midnight and Marc Swersky, Blue McSaws. And when I pull it
that's
up,
it.
it's this video that it starts, and you guys can't see it, but you'll see it right here. Big night in I can't even what's a but
Byzantium.
there you go. So that's the one.
Okay, Big Night
Tell
in
us more.
Byzantium, right?
Tell us more.
Well, that was the first release and also the name of the album. And something this album Mark and I have been working on for decades. And finally decided enough is enough. Let's get it out. And luckily, Charlie and Bruce at Deco, they said they loved it and they said put it out. But Big Nine Byzantium is just like a journey through an emotional landscape. Um, we never really planned in writing it. Mark comes up with a riff, and basically I jammed the lyrics on this one, sort of free-formed it, and it's about going on some kind of, you would think, spiritual journey, but I'm not sure because I never know when I write lyrics. But it seems like that. And whenever they get to the end of their journey, whoops, there's nothing there, which sort of informs my existential,
And I want to
beliefs.
work Mark in here too, but just so people are aware. All right. So this is just a couple of guys here that hey, I just happen to fall upon them, and we're about to talk about entry level music here. Charlie's storied career, he's written and produced for a wide variety of artists such as James Brown, Joni Mitchell, Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera, Cher. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Um, how so you're not a young man, but you're not an old man. How does somebody that aspires to do that get into I mean, these are some heavy hitters, my friend. How does
Uh,
somebody get in that path?
I really have no idea, except to be persistent and, keep your fingers crossed that you get lucky. I was fortunate because, I was in bands for years in New York City, where I'm from, first in dives in Brooklyn and then, in clubs in Manhattan. And Mark happened to be the last bass player in the incarnation of the Charlie Midnight Band, which went about, from A to A plus instead of from A to Z. So, but I was just hung in there because I loved what I was doing, and I was very fortunate. I had an album out in Colombia in 1983 called Innocent Bystander, which was a big failure. And but luck, I'm telling you, it was the least successful record in the history of Colombia. Okay, which I'm very proud of. It's hard to be number one at anything. Anyway, so I was very fortunate that somebody at the label sent it to this genius, Stan Hartman, and he didn't buy it, but he happened to love it, and which was amazing to me. And he called me up and he said, "Hey, I'm looking for a co-writer. Do you want to do some writing?" I said, "Yeah, sure." Since I'm living in a five-story walk-up in the East Village and I'm basically broke and I didn't get another uh, 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 album to do from the label, they dropped me. Sure, let's try it. And that was a serendipitous moment that changed my life.
I was
Dan
gonna say,
Hartman, Dan Hartman, and he got me, we went, living in America, and when we got hired to write that, basically they didn't really know who I was. It was really early on. It was Dan Hartman. So I've been really blessed. And then it went on from there, and Dan forced me to get into producing, which I had no desire to do. And it just, learned the philosophy. If a gig comes up, take it.
well, and Mark, no slouch in your own right, my friend. I mean, here's your bio, and I'm sitting here going, and I've been blessed. I'm a podcaster by accident, right? I'm a drummer in a band that couldn't play 5 years ago because of, what everybody knew would happen. So it's like, oh, I'll just start interviewing some of my friends, and then it goes from that to being able to talk to gentlemen such as yourself. So this is Mark in a nutshell. Singer, songwriter, producer, his albums have sold in excess of 50 million copies. I mean, just
All because of Charlie. All
but
because of Charlie.
marinate on that for a second, people, right? He's a two-time Grammy Award winner, featured on the Bodyguard soundtrack for the song Trust in Me, sung by Joe Cocker. You guys have written for Hilary Duff. So safe to say you guys are you a package deal? You try to do as much together. How does it work, Mark?
My
Go ahead,
answer,
Mark.
that's
Yeah,
my brother.
right.
I have two blood brothers, but I have another brother. And Charlie has been my brother and my best friend. Charlie, I tell the story all the time. I think I was 19-year-old, maybe 20-year-old punk. And I got asked by his ex manager if I'd be interested in trying out for his band. I did. I
Oh,
walked in the room. I saw the guys he had in his band. I took one look and said, well, this will last about 10 minutes. And needless to say, they all took me under. I was definitely, a young musician and just hungry to be in New York and play music. And, the band, Charlie, I got home and I'll never forget this. My mother said, hey, there's a guy named Charlie Midnight on the phone who wants to talk to you. And literally, I think Charlie could basically agree with this. From the second he made that phone call and he asked me to be in the band, we've been just a part of each other's lives ever since
yeah,
then.
yeah,
And, it was Charlie's encouragement for me to do every step of the way I do in music. I was a musician.
Right.
I played bass. Charlie probably, saw I had the ability to be a songwriter before I was going to be a songwriter. And he said to me, go do it. You can do it. And ever since then, listen, he's worked with the best of the best, and I've had the ability to work with some amazing people. But because of our brotherhood and our love and our true love for each other and our families, we have always, to this day, we still write. And he writes with other people, I write with other people, but there's a certain thing that I think that Charlie and I do that it's just really raw. It's really real. We never put blinders up. There's no canvas. We just do what we want to do. And to be honest with you, to walk into this record, it was all done because we just felt like doing it. And we would just, we might come back from the studio one day and just say, that was an okay session. And I'll start playing some chords or start mumbling some melody. And Charlie, I'll see him sitting there with a piece of just going, writing like this. Was the day when you still wrote things on a piece of paper. And he goes, okay, would you play that again? And next thing you know, a song is written.
Incredible.
And I say this to everybody. I don't think I really don't believe this, and Charlie will back it up. I really doubt any song took probably more than 20 minutes to a half hour to write the entire song.
Huh.
that's true.
And
That's
and
Incredible.
true. Well,
even going in the studio, there's a song on the record. There's two songs. There's one called Broke My Heart, and then there's another song called Saving Grace. Now, Saving Grace was written, the music and the melody was written, but when we were recording the song, it was always Charlie and I. I would go out in the room on the guitar, and Charlie would be on the microphone in the other room. And I'd start playing, and the song would be written, and we're putting a version down so we can get the musicians in to play on it. But the whole back half of the song Saving Grace goes into this thing called imagination because I kept playing.
Hmm.
And all of a sudden, he didn't have this written. he just freeformed that entire end.
Yeah, I was an early freestyle rapper. I was an early freestyle rapper. Okay, so
There you go.
you
Ahead of
know,
your time. Well, and
yeah.
as you're talking there, Mark, and and I'm side looking both of your the two of your bio and what you've done. So you were in the business, back when you used to hear about the days when it was tough to even get your songs written, and you guys are there, and now it's such a weird beast now in terms of how music is recorded and people get their royalties and stuff. What are some of the things, I guess, the yardsticks, and I'll start with you, Charlie, that maybe you've seen the changes over the years where you go like, man, this business was weird, but it's getting weirder and weirder by the day. Do you remember some of those milestones?
Oh yeah, the first milestone was digital recording, of course. You know, it went from, I mean, Mark knows, I had a fully 48 track analog studio in Glendale in Los Angeles. And then suddenly, almost overnight, we had to get digital recording because artists would come in, and I'm not going to name the artists,
Right.
and say, do you have auto tune?
Right.
A true
Exactly.
story.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, okay. Hopefully you don't need it, but of course, when somebody asks that, you know they're going to need it. I think it was a digital recording, and then of course the way it is today with social media. But I don't really. Mark pays a lot more attention to that stuff than I do. I don't. I don't pay any attention to social media. I've just been fortunate that people still want me to do things, you know, and Mark and I really don't push our social media, but I think that was the big change, you know, how quickly everything changed.
Well, I think the two of you are in I'm gonna, without sounding too much like a fan, I think you're in a super enviable position of you get in the business and both of you have played, and you've toured and you've done that, but to be able to write your songs and get your songs out there and have your songs actually work for you, is that not really, as a songwriter slash producer, what the ultimate goal is once you grow up? Mark, would you agree or disagree with that?
Um, yeah, I mean, listen, I think anytime somebody, I don't care what art you're creating, whether it's you're writing a book, you're making a painting, you're a chef, whatever it is that you're doing, if one person pays attention and says they like what you're doing, you've essentially already won.
Hmm.
But I think when you set out to create, you have to be honest with yourself and say, listen, there's going to be people that are going to love what I do and people that don't love what I do.
Right.
And, credit to Charlie, he always says you can't be worried about those things. You just have to create for the sake of creating. And, listen, I can honestly say, and I think Charlie would back this up. I could have probably gone on to be in the music business. I could have probably went to a record company and worked for a record company or a publisher or gone on to be a manager for an artist or something because I do pay attention to the ebbs and flows of the business and all that stuff. And it's part of the company that I run now for myself. But at the end of the day, I just want to create.
Yeah.
I just still get the same feeling today that I did when I was a 19-year-old kid picking up my bass guitar or picking up a guitar and writing a song and or anything like that. I still have that same feeling. What I don't have the feeling for, and what I will say is very difficult, is when you have to deal with people in the business who have really sort of, I don't want to name any names, but don't have any business really passing judgment.
Yeah.
And they talk to you about the dumbest things in the world. And they really are dumb. They don't
Yeah.
mean anything.
Yeah.
It's just them wanting to move their lips. That's the hardest part about the business to me right now. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's just frustrating.
yeah, I don't really pay attention. Mark is different. He's in that he knows all the stuff that's happening in the business. I don't pay attention to it unless I have to because I'm working with an artist. Okay. And I never wanted to be a songwriter. I wanted to be a rock and roll star. I wrote the songs for my album, but not until Dan Hartman opened up the door for me, I said, "Oh, they're not giving me another album to do. This is a good gig, you know, to be a songwriter." And it happened very quickly with Dan Hartman because of who he was. And then, you know, for me to be able to ride on his coattails till I got to a place where people knew who I was. That's, who can count on these things? You can't.
Well, and it's
You
a
just
weird,
can't.
but I mean, I'm looking at everybody that you've both, in your bio have worked with, and I mean, it's all over the map, right? It's not like, so it's not one genre. And this is probably a larger conversation, but when you're trying to get your song, I mean, there's stuff that you write for yourself, no doubt, and you go, I'm going to record this, and then there's stuff that somebody comes to you and says it's for artist XYZ. How do you guys, I guess, wade through that and decide how that
Well,
works?
I'd like to address that. I have never pitched a song
Love it.
to, to anybody. I mean, except there was the one person that did pitch us writing a song was that was living in America. It was the first and last time that they pitched Dan Hartman and I as songwriters for Rocky Four. Um, but other than that, I've never pitched anything. I've been very, very fortunate. First was Dan Hartman. Dan Hartman becomes your own personal, um, pitcher,
Everything.
basically. They come to him, such a genius. And then since then, it's sort of snowballed. I haven't pitched anything. I've been, my cup runneth over. I don't even know what to say about it. It amazes me sometimes to think the circuitous route to where I am today is, but you say writing for different types of people. Well, when you become a songwriter and somebody offers you the gig, you figure it out. I mean, Hilary Duff is one thing, James Brown is another thing, Barbara Streisand is another thing, and you've just got to do the gig, and you've got to keep in mind who the artist is. And
Right.
I have to say, I am proud of everything I've ever written, because when I get to the end of a song and the artist likes it, and I feel I've done my job, that moment keeps me going on, moving on to the next and the next and the next. So thing is not to judge anybody that gets to a position in this business where they can make a living, or they can have a hit song, or they can have an audience. I mean, I don't judge them. What it takes to get there. I mean, I might not like the music for myself,
Right.
but what it takes to break through for anybody, I pat them on the back.
Well, and I'll ask you the same thing, Mark. But I mean, Charlie, your answer is kind of a masterclass in a sense of how you handle. Because a lot of people, they write and everybody's, I got to get this song. Somebody's got to like, I got to find the person. I got to network. And you're shaking your head, Mark, and I appreciate that because I think the way that this business works sometimes is just so messed up, and there people just don't know how to maneuver it. Your response, Mark.
Everything that Charlie said is absolutely 100% correct. I mean, my first major break as a songwriter, I'll be really honest with you, it was the third song I was ever a part of writing. And how did it get written? I was sitting in this artist that I was working with that Charlie knew very well, our co-writer of Trust in Me, Francesca Begay. And I'm sitting at the piano and I'm not even a piano player, and I'm playing this melody on my right hand. And Francesca comes running out off the phone. She said, "Could you keep playing that?" And I'm playing it, and all of a sudden, next thing I know, we have a song, and we record a band version of it. I send it to Charlie. Charlie, I'll never forget this, heard it, and he and Dan Hartman came back from a meeting overseas. And one of the things that Charlie wanted to tell me was like being a brother is like, you're not going to believe this, but we got the Joe Cocker gig to produce the record. And he and Dan were both like, man, that song you sent, there's something really great about it. We want to play it we'd like to pitch it for Joe. What the F? And then Charlie said, I have some ideas on it. And all of a sudden, Charlie gets together with Francesca and I, comes up with this masterful bridge, helps guide the lyrics together. And I literally, we do back in the day when you could do an acoustic version of a song.
Yeah.
We did it, and Charlie, I'll never forget this. He calls me up and says, "You're not going to believe this. We're going to record the song for the record." From there, that's my career. I wrote a bunch of songs with Francesca that made it to her record. One of the songs did incredibly well. It's still a Muzak standard, whatever that means to this day.
Yeah.
And and then it just kept flowing from there. But I will tell you something. Anytime I worked with somebody and they said, we have to write a song for this person like that. It never resonated.
Hmm.
But what always did resonate when something just naturally happened. And all through my career, it's been like that. And again, I honestly learned how to develop artists from Charlie. And just say you write what you write, you create what you create. And then those that really, 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 they will materialize as the ones that you have to put forth to people. And there's the old thing I say to people all the time, just because you write a song on Monday and somebody hears it on Tuesday and they don't really like it, they could love that same song on Thursday because the sun was shining a different way, or they had a different color shirt on, or their desk was clean, or they brushed their teeth a different way. It's kind of mystical and magical. And to be really honest with you, that's what the Blue McSaws record's about. It's about a journey. It's about this thing that just is what it is. Charlie and I share a very similar, you know, fairy dust, throw it up in the air. It is going to be what it's going to be. Who knows where the journey's going kind of life and belief.
Well, let me ask
And
you this, because I mean, you put this record out, and I'm not going to say, hey, gentlemen, what are your goals? What are your aspirations? But was it as simple as, yeah, passion project, we got it out onto the next? Was it something that you guys had in, I guess, in the chamber for a while that you wanted? Like, what are the
Well,
expectations for both of you for this project?
well, we've been writing this because we always get together and write
Yep.
for ourselves. And we've been writing this since I lived in New York, which was, I don't know, another century. Okay. And we just compiled this material. And then I was fortunate I had my own studio in Glendale. We had great friends, and Mark would come up with a riff, or I would come up with an idea, and we just gather the friends in the studio. A lot of the playing was Mark. We have one song on their love song number one, where Mark plays what is that, Mark? The broom? What is it?
yeah, I played a broom on it.
He plays a
Nice.
broom and also pounding on the guitar, right?
Yeah.
As a
Yep.
rhythm instrument. Yeah. And the thing is, there's joy in what we do, and we go for it. And we're lucky our friends were happy to be involved with it. So we're not thinking, oh, is this going to be commercial? It's not going to be commercial. And maybe it's not commercial, but we love this album. It's really from our heart, and it gave us a lot of fun to do, which is part of
Yeah.
the
It's
whole
joy,
thing.
all joy.
Not all joy, not having anybody stand. Look, there are some times, like when I write for Barbra Streisand, I can't write just what's in my heart. Okay, I have to, write a lot of it with Jay Landers, and he's been her executive producer for like 30 years, so he knows what she's looking for. So we talk about, a topic, and I have to take it from there. Now, of course, at that point, I do put myself into it, but really, somebody like Barbara is so strong about what she wants, so you have to write for her. But I think what Mark was saying was that it always comes from a place in what you do, you know. And yeah, as far as this record goes, this is what we do.
But
No excuses, no alibis.
I think it's incredible that the two of you guys can be sitting there and just going, hey, you know what? We're doing it. And if it does great, it does great. Like, let's call it what it is, gentlemen. You don't have anything to prove. You don't have anything to, you guys have the pedigree. You've done it, right? And you still continue to do it. But it's to me, it's really neat that at everything you've done, you still want to do a project that's near and dear to your heart, not because you want to make money off it, or that there's something to me that's again a master class in how you should approach songwriting in the business. I don't know how you feel about that, Mark, but that's the vibe that I'm getting.
Yeah, I don't, I couldn't give you any other answers than that. I'm just, I get to work like Charlie does. This swatch is huge. I mean, I just, I'm working with, a 19 and a 25-year-old artist right now, and I also am developing a 40-something-year-old artist in the country world right now,
Nice.
and that's a huge thing. And the music couldn't be different than each other.
Mhm.
But, at the same time, sometimes you have to do some research into what they're doing to maybe understand where they're coming from. And they'll mention artists to me. It's like, what? But then for me, it's like what I'll do is I'll figure out, oh, that artist, well, they come from this place. This is what they like. Then I can relate to it. But at the end of the day, listen, unless you're trying to write, I think, a lot of pop music these days and whatever you call pop music, they essentially in a lot of ways could be jingles.
Yeah.
And if you and it, being that type of a writer is a very specific type of a writer. Now, sidebar real quickly, Dan Hartman, who was Charlie's partner for years, who I'm glad to have called a friend and a mentor as well. I always tell everybody if Dan was still alive to this day, he'd still be writing circles around anybody because Dan had the rare ability of writing that kind of a song that you felt like could have been a jingle, but they always came from this honest place that he did because he was so real at what he did.
Mhm.
He never put on, he never approached it where he was putting on a game to do it. It was real. And I think that the point of everything is you have to put your heart and soul into it. I never wanted to be that kind of a writer. I just still want to be the guy sitting at an acoustic guitar or piano, just writing and playing. And
Yeah.
then, lyrics are not my strength. I can write some lyrics. I've been blessed to write with some of the best lyricists in the business. And I also think that's another thing you do. I'm a collaborator. I am a collaborator. I am not a soul songwriter. I never wanted to be a soul songwriter and probably never wanted to be a soul songwriter because I could write with Charlie Midnight.
There you
I
go. Right.
could, I had somebody who had the ability to say things and sing things that transcended and moved me in a way that I wanted to move.
Yeah.
And and I think that's where it all comes from. I will never lose till the day I no longer walk this earth. I will never lose that childlike propensity, that Pied Piper, Peter Pan thing to want to write and create music.
Well, this
Yeah.
stuff
I think that,
fascinates me, and I'll tell you why, gentlemen, because I have the opportunity to interview in a week or so John J.R. Robinson, who's played with some of the
Oh,
amazing,
amazing.
right?
Greatest drummer. Great
And
drummer.
true
oh, yes.
story. I'm a 14-year-old kid, and the Modern Drummer in June '87 comes out, and it's like, who's he? I'm a rock guy, and just to that day, that article had such an effect on me as a drummer, just about how he is talking about stuff. So this stuff is fascinating. That I'm sitting here with two gentlemen that let's call it what it is. You've had a major influence on the business.
Yeah. I
It
mean,
must be a
we've been
pretty
very
cool feeling.
fortunate. Yeah. I mean, like I said before, I'm amazed all the time at how I wound up where I am. Just one serendipitous moment. And of course, we have to give ourselves credit that for whatever reason, people like what we do and keep on coming back to us. I mean, you were talking before, and I have to throw this in about being a master class. Well, I do have a book out, and it's called Deserves Got Nothing to Do with It. Talking crap with Charlie Midnight. And CRAP is an acronym for the 5 elements that will help you survive your emotional journey to success. CRAPP, collaboration, relationships, ambition, passion, and persistence. And it's available on Amazon.
Well, we're gonna pitch that. Let me tell you, because I love that stuff and that type of information. Unfortunately, nowadays musicians just they don't have enough of a sense of the history and whatnot. It's just everything is just so immediate and attention spans are so incredibly low. And I love this stuff. Last little piece of business too. How do I direct my people to get a hold of this creation that you guys have put out?
Well, honestly, it's Blue McSaws, BLUEMCSAWS. We are on Instagram. We're on Facebook. It's available on all your streaming services, all your DSPs. I believe you can purchase it through Deco Entertainment, who's our wonderful record label, if they want to. And you can contact Charlie. You can find Charlie and I anywhere you want. And we're, I think we're pretty affable and nice gentlemen, and we'd be happy to, chat with anybody.
I
But
can vouch for that. I
we
can
we
vouch for
you know we just want people to enjoy the music we created, and I can't say anything more or less than that, except I'm honored to be here and I'm grateful that somebody's listening to our music.
Well, I'm absolutely honored that you guys agreed to do this, and I'm a little ashamed in my provincial internet situation, but we were able to pull it together. Gentlemen, thank you so much. And like I say, as soon as this is done, I can't wait to get it out because I think people are just going to be gobsmacked with the information that they got here. So thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Totally
you. Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
We
We are
loved
back
it.
after this.